LinkedIn can feel pretty overwhelming, especially when you realize that there's so much information into it. But one thing I've learned is two things. I guess a couple of things I've learned. One, you can always learn something from someone you know, so don't feel like you have to learn everything right away. But if you have specific questions, ask. In many ways, that's how I was able to figure out the various pieces of LinkedIn. And then the second thing is once you feel confident about LinkedIn, more often than not, LinkedIn will change. So with updates, with revisions, where something was placed may be moved. So to some extent, just get used to being a little, know that it is truly an amazing tool. Today, the presentation will cover three main topics: leveling up your profile, using LinkedIn as a database, because it really is a treasure trove of information, and then also networking tips and strategies. I anticipate that these first three pieces will take about 30 minutes or so. That should allow us plenty of times to ask questions that I'm happy to answer. And even with the chat feature, you might be able to share your own thoughts too. So, with the Zoom menu bar, you'll see that there is a chat option. Feel free to type in questions, and Megan will be monitoring the questions as they come in and answering or organizing those questions so I can answer them during the Q&A. I also want to acknowledge that we have our colleague, Lauren Barkley, who's also helping us behind the scenes. So you might see Lauren post messages in chats as well too. So as I mentioned, I will talk about your profile, the database, and networking. But in actuality, I'm going to flip it around, because in many ways, to up your LinkedIn game is to actually use it more than just a profile. So with that, let me share my screen for LinkedIn itself. And hopefully you can all see this, which is my landing page for LinkedIn. As I mentioned, many people put a lot of emphasis on your LinkedIn profile, and I do believe it's actually important, because before people actually interact with you over the phone, over text, over video chat, in many cases, they are looking you up on LinkedIn, so it's actually your first chance to make a first impression with people. And that's why towards the end of my presentation, I'll give you some tips on how to elevate your LinkedIn profile to represent you to the best of your abilities. But to begin with, in the notion of networking and increasing your visibility, this is where you can start. Where you are right now is what is called my, what I call my LinkedIn feed page, or the home page. One thing I find too is that LinkedIn has so many different pieces to it. There is there's the part that's showing you individuals' profile pages. There's also the pages that company use to represent themselves. There are pages for schools. There are pages for groups. Anyone can create a group to build community. I find that after just a few clicks, I feel like I may have gone down a rabbit hole and I'm wondering where I am. So whenever I have that feeling of getting lost, in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see the LinkedIn icon. Whenever I feel lost, I click on that, and that brings me to this sort of home page, this feed page. And what happens is anyone I'm connected to, I will see their activity. So if they've shared a video, if they've shared a comment, if they've liked a particular comment or something else that someone has said, this is where you can see that. And in terms of actually increasing your visibility and starting networking, you can do so very easily by just looking through these feed and on occasion liking certain posts or even commenting on some posts. This way, people know that you're out there in the internet space. So again, networking can't happen if you're not visible, and one way of gaining visibility is simply being active on a platform like LinkedIn. I do sort of relay a comment that was shared with me, that there's a lot of people on social media who are lurkers, right? They're the ones who watch posts, who see what's going on, but they don't necessarily participate because sometimes it feels a little scary or intimidating. But these are some very easy steps to up your LinkedIn game, increasing your visibility by just more regularly checking the feed of your contacts and again, liking, applauding, clicking on heart just to say that you saw their post, and then when possible, adding a supportive comment. In addition to that, if you want to take the next step up in terms of networking and increasing your visibility, you can specifically find articles that you share. So that, again, puts you a little bit more out there in terms of visibility among the community. And for those who are even feeling more bold, providing actual content. So sharing a reflection of something that you believe in, that connects to you professionally. These are all different levels of increasing your comfort level and also your use of LinkedIn as a tool. At this moment, I'd like to take a quick little detour because for some people who are newer to social media, it may feel like there's just so many different platforms and it's overwhelming, it's really confusing. What do you post where? And so this is where I will use an analogy that, again, I didn't originally come up with, but I borrowed it. I'm extending it from what I had heard. Keep in mind that what you want to post should be appropriate to that particular platform. So many of you are familiar with Facebook, and Facebook tends to be a much more informal, casual, comfortable setting. And so just keep in mind what you might normally post on Facebook may not be appropriate on LinkedIn. So I use this metaphor. Think of LinkedIn as a boardroom or as a conference room at work. Think of the content that you would hear discussed in a boardroom or a conference room. It's a little bit more simplistic, a little bit more conservative, definitely much more professional. On the other hand, think of Facebook like a picnic in the park with family and friends. You can see how silly pictures and being goofy works perfectly appropriate there, but it may not be the most appropriate here. So just again, keep in mind, LinkedIn is a professional networking platform. So just keep your comments a little bit more in this particular space. So like I said, these are some ways to just increase your visibility and really make LinkedIn a springboard for you professionally. Another way that you can use LinkedIn to increase your networking reach and visibility is by using LinkedIn groups. There are so many groups within the LinkedIn space. So whether you are professionally interested in PR, public relations, or you care about history, or you care about technology, all across the board. So again, I encourage you to spend some time typing it into this general search bar, and then you can see across the board the various groups that exist. But one group I specifically want to bring your attention to is the University of Oregon group. And so if you type in University of Oregon, you'll be able to choose options of U of O in people's profiles, U of O in the job space, U of O, the school, where we actually aggregate, or actually not we, but LinkedIn aggregates all the people who have chosen University of Oregon under their education section or under their employment section, and it pulls all of our data together. But the one I want to show you right now is the U of O group page. This is a group that is for U of O students, alumni, faculty, staff, anyone who has had some experience, some touch point with the university that we all love. And so right now you can see there are nearly 23,000 members in this group. And what people can do is share conversations that others can comment on. If you are a prolific blogger, this might increase your visibility. Colleagues who work at the university like to point out the different ways that you can connect to each other and also to the school. So this is one way you can be active and increase your visibility. But another main reason being a member of a group is really helpful is that, as most of you know, LinkedIn is set up with various degrees of connectedness. If I am directly connected to Megan, that means within LinkedIn, I sent her a connection request and she accepted, then LinkedIn lists us as a first degree contact. Now, for example, if I'm looking at Jim Aframo, you can see that there's the number there's a second next to it, which means I'm not directly connected to Jim, but I know someone who knows Jim directly. So that's what the second means. And then third, of course, is I know someone who knows someone who knows someone. So it gets a little bit extended. But one benefit of being in the same LinkedIn group is even though I'm not directly connected to Jim, I can actually not only request a connection request, I can actually send him a message directly within the LinkedIn group. So let me see if I can do a quick demonstration. I can go to see all for the members. And it might take a moment. Okay. And then here is a search of all the people, whether I'm directly connected to them or not. It'll tell me first degree, second degree. But here, if I were to type in Jim's name, hopefully it will start the search. And you can see that Jim is now listed here, and I can actually send him a message that goes directly into his inbox. So this is one of the benefits of being in the same group. So for those of you who are in a professional niche, use LinkedIn, find other people who do international work or who do nonprofit, who might be in the arts, whatever it is. Look for those groups, sign up, because then you will be able to directly message people within that particular group. And then later on, of course, you can still ask them to be connected to you via LinkedIn, so you can connect more seamlessly. But once again, this is another way where LinkedIn really can help you grow your network. Okay. And then on maybe the final note about how do you connect with people, this is where my final tip in this area of networking and strategies and suggestions. Here, in particular with the example of Jim Aframo, within LinkedIn, I could just simply send him a connection request because we're close enough in connectivity where I can do that. If you reach out to someone who's third degrees or more, LinkedIn may not be willing to, may not allow you to send them a connection request. But here is my own suggestion for connecting with other people anew. I can go to Jim's profile page, and right under his intro, I can see that there are 18 people who are my first degree connections that Jim knows. My suggestion for you is if you have a mutual contact, reach out to the mutual contact and use this occasion as a way to warm up that connection. So for example, I know TJ Daniel, and TJ is directly connected to Jim. So one thing I can do is reach out to TJ and just say, TJ, gosh, it's been 6 months since we've talked. I hope you're doing well. Again, I can use this occasion just to warm up that relationship with TJ. But then at some point via a message in LinkedIn or outside, I can say, by the way, I'm interested in getting in touch with Jim Aframo. How well do you know him? And then I can get a little bit more background information. And from there, if I ask TJ to reach out to Jim saying, would you be willing to talk to James? It's much more likely that Jim will say yes, because he's being asked by a mutual acquaintance who knows both of us. So again, I hope that these strategies on increasing your visibility, using groups within LinkedIn to find other people who have your similar interests, and then also this technique of not just, sort of regularly clicking through and connecting with people. Again, I think those are some of the reasons I think LinkedIn can really, help you, grow that network. And again, hopefully you can enjoy some of those tips. All right. So at this point, let me again practice what I preach. Whenever I'm in a specific niche area, I will go back to the LinkedIn profile page just to kind of center myself. So the second main reason I wanted to share, the second main topic I wanted to share with you today is using LinkedIn as a database. LinkedIn is collecting so much amazing information, and it is making public information that people are okay with other people having access to. And so from a networking perspective, from a career exploration perspective, but also from a career road mapping perspective, you can take a look at other people's profiles to learn a little bit more about what they do, but also their career path to get where they are right now. So for most people on this webinar, you are Duck affiliated. Either you are Duck educated, Duck employed, whatever is the case. So let me show you how you can easily find the U of O school page, where you can then get access to all this amazing data that LinkedIn has aggregated for us. So for me, I will go to my own profile. And what you'll see is, again, towards the end, I'll go back to my profile and give you some tips. But for me, because I work at the University of Oregon, currently in the Alumni Association, but I also used to work at the business school, as long as you use the drop-down option for the places that you've gone to school or work, that means that LinkedIn will be connecting your data with other people who have that same affiliation. So here for University of Oregon, I can click on that link. I'm an administrator for this particular page, but I'm going to view it as a member. So you'll see what, so I'll see what you see. But think of this as the University of Oregon school, the school homepage on LinkedIn. So not a lot of people can have access to this. There can be dialogue, but a lot of the information here is a little bit more specific, formal, a little bit more official, I guess. And you can see a couple of quick things. One, you can see that right now, LinkedIn says there's about 133,000 Oregon alums. And the way they know that is in everyone's individual education section, it's over 133,000 people who have put U of O under their education section. The fact that we have right now about 230,000 living alumni means that at this point, more than half of our alumni are on LinkedIn. And so it's once again, like I said, a treasure trove of information that is available for you to take a look at. And again, I'll use this moment to take a quick little tangent to say, personally, I don't have a premium account with LinkedIn. Personally speaking, I don't think it's necessary, but I will say if your employer is willing to pay for a premium account, wonderful. If your family members want to gift that to you as a graduation gift, wonderful. But for my practical purposes, I like not to have that extra bonus so that I can relate more to the majority of people who may not have LinkedIn Premium. So on this school page, the way to access this treasure trove of information on alumni is if you scroll further down and go to the alumni sidebar, you will get to the page where you can sift through alumni based on multiple categories. So here's where you can see the 133,000 alums. It organizes it in 6 different categories. For now, I'm going to show more, so I see a little bit more of the options. But on this page, it organizes our alumni by where they live, where they work, click on the next button, what they do, what they studied, and then click on the next button, what they're skilled at, and also how you're connected. So this says that there are 1,763 people that I'm directly connected to. And on this topic, again, thank you all so much for participating today. I know that you are from all over the country and also the world. I think we had one registrant from Saudi Arabia, Jubail, I think. So if you're on this, thank you so much. But it was great to see people up and down the West Coast. I saw Montana, I saw Oklahoma, I saw DC. So again, thank you all so much for coming and learning a tool to hopefully help you better connect with other ducks. But back to this database, if someone were trying to find other ducks in their own area, this is how you can use this as a filtering mechanism. So let's say, and again, as you can see, this lists the cities that have the majority of ducks in them. So you can see US, so obviously there's going to be about 10,000 LinkedIn users who are outside the US, which is kind of neat. But there's Portland, there's Eugene, there's San Francisco, there's Seattle, there's LA. So just for a test, let me go to LA, and when you click this bar, notice how the number of alumni shrinks, because what you're doing is you're filtering the database. So from the 133,000, when you click on LA, Now you are only looking at the 5,600 who are ducks who identify themselves in the LA area. This goes back to your profile page. Make sure your location is updated. For those of you who are still in school and soon to be graduating, double check, is your location the location where you want to go? If you want to stay in Eugene, keep it Eugene. But if you're returning home to LA, you might want to put this updated information in your profile. But once you filter it by location, you can of course filter it by where they work. But I would also say if you're doing some career exploration, you can then go to this next column of what they do. And for example, if you're interested in doing something that's related to media and communication, you can further filter our ducks in LA by that category, and notice how the 5,000 number shrinks to 600 some when you add that filter. And you can see what you've been filtering on in this header. And so now that you know these are ducks who work in media communication, 644 profiles are still a lot to look through. So I would try to filter a little bit further. And so I might filter it based on what they're skilled at. So maybe I'm particularly interested in, let's say, people who actively Photoshop. So if I click on that box, the 600 some shrink down to, I think it was 143. Yep. And each time we filter, you'll see that this recalibrates all the different categories. And so I can see that in LA, people who work in media and communication and use Adobe Photoshop, there's 4 of them who work at NBC Universal. There's 2 at Loyola, there's 2 at BuzzFeed. And to figure out who these people are, I can actually click on the employer, add that to the filter. So I now go to the 4 people. And if I scroll up, these are those 4 people who are ducks, who work media communication, use Adobe, and it's a much easier target list for me to spend my efforts on, to build my network and rapport, all of those good things. And so just as an example, I can see this is their name. I can see that their 2nd degree connection, which means I don't know them, but I know someone who does know them. And below that, I can even see that there's 45 people I know who know Nicole, 16 who know Michelle, and I can reach out to any one of those 16 or 45 people and say, how well do you know these folks? I can reconnect with those people, and then I can also ask them to do an introduction for me. So again, LinkedIn is a really, really powerful tool. And the additional thought I will share at this point is versus starting over all the time, and you can always do that by clearing all. You can also just remove specific filters. You can remove the employer filter, so you can look at other places that they work. You can say, well, Photoshop isn't necessarily what I want to be so focused on. It's marketing or leadership or one of those other categories I saw. But once again, this is so powerful. And so for those of you who are trying to find out how do you do where someone else is, this is a great tool to do. Excuse me. At this point, let me also just do another search, and then I have another point to make. So beyond, switch actually to something that's maybe a little less typical. What if you're looking for a location that's not listed here? You could just add it and then type it in. So this is just a wild step in the dark, but I'll type in Memphis. And then as long as I choose their particular filter, I can see that there's, right, and then identify them in the Memphis area. And then in terms of someone who I might be reaching out to, maybe I'm interested in University of Memphis, click on that, and then now I see the 1 alum who's there. Let me go to Terry's profile. And the point I want to make here is the only reason I was able to find Terry is because under her experience as a PhD student or under her education, the only reason LinkedIn knew to her to this community is because she used the U of O school category in these sections. For some of you, you might be affiliated with a law school who has its own school page. Some of you may be affiliated with the Lundquist College of Business, who has its own LinkedIn page. My advice for you is under education, even though it may look a little unusual, put two entries, one that's University of Oregon and the other that says Lundquist College of Business, so that no matter how people are filtering alumni through a specific college or the university as a whole, they will be able to find you. And this is a tip that we can share with everyone that we know, okay? So with that, again, to go, the beauty of at least Chrome is I back button, I don't have to start over. And this will get me back to my latest search. And once again, if I clear all, it goes back to the highest level. You can see that you can scratch in years. There's so many things that you can filter by. So I encourage you to play with this when you have the time. A side note, maybe that I can add here, you know, again, actually, again, I'm watching time, so maybe actually I might answer some of, I may share some additional information when we get to the Q&A page. But I think just to keep this presentation going, let me now go to the final part, which is your LinkedIn profile. So just to review, I started the presentation by upping your LinkedIn game when it comes to networking, being visible, you know, being part of the community. Then I moved to using LinkedIn as a database, find people, learn from their career trajectory, find ways to learn about their experience, and then eventually connecting with them. But last but not least, we'll go to the profile section and give you some tips to maximize your presentation. One reason that today I chose to invert this presentation is because without me encouraging to focus on your profile, you're going to do it anyway. But what most people don't realize is unless you have great accomplishment, maybe many years of experience in a field, it's unlikely other people will come looking for you. So again, with no disrespect to recent grads or early career alumni, there's just a lot of in those categories, and you know, you have less that makes you stand out. As you have more experience, you'll stand out more. So the idea is you want your LinkedIn profile to be as strong as possible, but none of us, frankly, can afford to just sit back and expect a strong LinkedIn profile to just draw in opportunities, networking contacts, all those other things. So the strategy for your LinkedIn profile is make it as possible so when someone comes looking for you, wanting to learn more about you, you're presenting yourself as well as possible. And frankly, you're available 24 hours a day versus, you know, just when you're at your desk or you know, when you're available to take a phone call. So in terms of some of those specific ways to up your LinkedIn game when it comes to your profile, I'll just try to keep it pretty specific. It sounds basic, but for your profile picture, just really keep it simple. Keep it a straight headshot, nicely cropped, and keep the distractions to a minimum. Most people won't necessarily, they won't you know, hire you, you know, just because of your LinkedIn profile, but more often than not, a profile that has distractions ends taking away people's attention. So if the picture looks like it's obvious that that you cropped someone out from next to you, it just looks sloppy. If it's a picture where it's, you know, big picture of Machu Picchu and you're a little segment, again, for people to build a relationship with you. So with your picture, just keep it nice and simple. As you can see, I have a profile picture, and to be frank, up until today, I didn't have anything in there. Once again, because there are more features that you can personalize, there's also more distractions you can make. I put this up here because I just really wanted to show a few things about myself. I love to travel. I love Oregon. Mount Hood symbolizes us, and planes, we'll one day get back on them, but I do love traveling by plane. So again, you know, we put up there, just make sure there is a story that you can share, okay? Beyond your picture, you know, in the same theme of how people build an image in mind, do realize that you are getting a reputation from what you put in your LinkedIn profile. And some of the basic guidelines for your resume still apply for your LinkedIn profile. Errors really just, are just ways that some of us will end up shooting ourselves in the foot. And walk into a networking reception with toilet paper across your shoes. Imagine if you introduce yourself and you have tea stains on your shirt or blouse. In many ways, typos or grammar mistakes, those are similar things in the internet space. When you think that your LinkedIn profile, just make sure you share it with a couple of friends who have a good eye for detail, and tell them you're helping me by showing me the inconsistencies. When do I period and when don't I? When do I use present tense and when don't I? When do I go from full sentences to sentences? Because we oftentimes build our resume profile in chunks, we sometimes forget that someone else can tell us. So those are one way to just kind of keep your impression as good as possible. The next level, again, there's lots of little subtleties, but the next level I will jump to is the section on experience. So one thing you'll notice on my profile is I use prose. I do that strategically because my intention is if someone were to see my resume, were to see my LinkedIn profile, I'd rather not that they see the exact same thing. I put it out there that if you're someone who is new to LinkedIn and you just have to, I actually do think it's okay to do more of a copy and paste into LinkedIn so that you have something to start with. But once you have a little bit more time, I encourage you to go to those descriptions and provide more detail. Because what many of us have been taught is that try to keep your resume to one page so it's succinct, it's focused. But the beauty of LinkedIn is there's no page limitation. So you can go into much more detail. And again, another way to up your LinkedIn game when it comes to your description is to go beyond just your duties, go beyond responsibilities. In many ways, if your resume or LinkedIn profile reads like a job description, what that says is what you were supposed to do, but did you do it? Did you do it well? Did you do it under time? Did you do it with people? A lot of that is lost. So again, to up your description, try to go to details of how you did things, the obstacles you overcame, the number of people you worked with, deadlines you were under, and when possible, also be sure to talk about results and impact. So when, especially as employers are trying to scour who to choose to interview and who not to, the ones where they have questions in their head answered just simply by reading about what you've done in advance of talking with you, move ahead. And beyond that, when you actually do have an interview, the interview can be spent talking about maybe higher levels of your skills, abilities, and characteristics, your values, things that help people get to know you, versus talking about the basics that, yeah, that's important, but maybe they could have learned that earlier. And then the last tip I'm going to share in terms of really upping your game with your profile is about branding. As you are starting your LinkedIn profile, it makes sense just to put down to show that you have work history, you have it. That's all fine and good. But especially as you get more experience, the way to make your profile more of a branded tool is to start making it look like where you're going. So as a research group, it's okay to put that you had 3 or 4 jobs, that you were a leader for 2 or 3 clubs or organizations. It's fine to say you were part of the physics, team, and you also were a TA for writing, and variety is good. It shows someone to be more well-rounded, and that's okay. But I think as you start having more of a focus on where you want your career to go, and as you've done more research about your industry choice, as you've looked at other people's profiles who are in that sector, also as you've been looking at job postings and you're hearing what employers want, and you're actually seeing the terms they're using, the phrases you're using, the best way to brand your profile and to start branding yourself is to start incorporating those industry terms, those industry goals, all those details into your profile as well as into your resume. So as your targeted employer reads your materials, you can almost see them nodding their head because they're saying, yes, she's got this. Yes, she's done this. Yes. Again, the more that they nod, the more that they're going to move you into the pile for further consideration. But if you don't do this extra step, you can see how if there is a choice between two profiles, very similar in education experience, but one just has a little bit more terminology, lingo, insight into the world that the employer lives in, they're going to think that this person's going to be easier to train, easier to work with. They're more likely to be happy once they get hired on. All those things comes from going beyond the basic information to actually having more of that insider perspective. So with that, I want to wrap up the formal part of my presentation. As I've covered, starting with just increasing your visibility, and that can just be with a comment or a like there within LinkedIn. Then we talked about how to use LinkedIn as a database to do that due diligence to find out what people are doing, what employers are all about, and then make those connections, in the fields that you want to go into. And last but not least, talking about the profile. So with that, I will wait for my colleague Megan McKinney to share, to pose questions that you've been asking via the chat feature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you so much, James. We do have a couple of questions here. The first question that we got, which you actually touched on, but I just wanted to come back to it and see if you had any last minute things to add, was in the work experience section, do you recommend writing paragraph descriptions of each position you've had in the past, including bullet points similar to a resume, or nothing at all? And I really liked what you had to say about using prose versus bullets and focusing on what you accomplished and how you did your job versus just listing off duties. But we did have a question regarding that.
Great. As Megan mentioned, both are fine, but I would also think of you weighing the pros and cons. Let's say the work that you're going into is very communication heavy. If that's the case, then I think there's an argument to be made to having more prose because it allows you to showcase your writing skills, right? So that may be one reason to use prose. Mm-hmm. Another is, let's say a career changer. And so if you just look at the descriptions of responsibilities, it may not put you in the space where you want to go. So instead, in your link file, you can focus in on maybe just a couple of pieces of your previous work that relates to where you want to go. But with prose, you can flesh it out much more and talk about how you worked with other people on it, how you gained skills, how you learned on your own, how you were teachable, and the result of that effort. So those are some benefits for using prose. Now, one of the pros for using something more traditional like bullets and phrases is speed. It's easier, it's quicker for people to scan through. So if you happen to be, some experience and you want to show that breadth, you might choose to use bullet points that still talk about results and impact of your work that goes into qualitatively how, but the idea is to be stuck with one line for a bullet. You can let that bullet go into maybe 2 lines, just so that you're able to showcase your impact and your accomplishments a little bit more. So again, those are some of the ways to prose versus bullets.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Here's a really good question. What is your advice on whether or not to accept a connection from someone you don't know when the context of why they're reaching out is unclear?
Great question. There's a few things to comment on here. So one, it's your network. So you can be the one to decide who you let in and who you don't. It's not an exclusive thing, but I think, again, what is your strategy? For me, I like to know that everyone that is a first degree connection to me has some reason for being part of my network. So one reason is if I see that you're a duck, I accept you, right? So if you went to school here, if you worked here, because I work at the Alumni Association, again, I want all ducks to be connected, and I'm happy to be part of that. Now, if you don't have a U of O connection, then it's, for me, I have other priorities. One is that maybe you're someone in my same profession and I've met you at a conference, no problem, I'll accept you. But I will say that there are connection requests where I see no connection. And for me, it's not that I don't like them or don't want them, but I feel like we don't have anything to go from. And if Megan said to me, oh, I see that you're connected to, John Lee, what do you know? If I have nothing to say, I think that's kind of empty. And so that's my own particular philosophy. So again, whatever your philosophy is, it's okay, make your decisions, but on the point of connection request, at all opportunities, please try to include a personal note, because it shows that much more interest, that much effort, and in that note, you might at least explain, how you me, or why you're interested in connecting me. Doesn't mean that I will always say yes, but that gives me a little bit more foundation to work from, versus, again, some people just go through LinkedIn and go connect. And again, I don't want to be one of the people in that community.
Next question we have is, if you're job searching, should you include that in your title? I was recently laid off. Should I keep my old title while searching?
Good question as well. So we are in a time of the world where things are happening crazy, and oftentimes we know that it's the economic circumstance that's making people lose their jobs. So I personally think that this is a time where if you need help because you're looking for work, let that be known so that other people know how to help you. I think there's a couple of things. One, Megan, your question made me also think about the headline feature that you can include on your LinkedIn profile. By default, it puts your job title in there. Now, I know some people who are much more creative than I am. So for me, I kept my title there because I think the title says what I needed to say. I'm head of a program about career networking at the U of O, and so that's very much the theme. But I also know people who focus more on educator or motivator or coach or connector. Again, it's however you want to brand yourself. But I think if you are job searching, I think that could be fine there. But maybe what you do is here, maybe you highlight your traits, you highlight your skills, you highlight your industry expertise. Maybe here you don't necessarily say that you're job searching, it's the first thing they see. But if you scroll down, in your description, maybe at some point you can say, you can provide a little bit more context of, was recently furloughed because of the economic downturn, excited to return if I can, but I'm using this opportunity to expand my horizons and explore other career fields, to be nimble, right? So I think if you're job searching right now, please don't feel bad or embarrassed about it. We are all in it together, and the more that we can help each other, again, today we might hire you, tomorrow you might hire me. So again, keep that mentality.
Mm-hmm. All right, it looks like we have one more question for the time being. Would there be any benefit for recent graduates who are on the job hunt to have a premium account? I know you mentioned that you don't have a premium account. Maybe we can go back and learn a little bit more about that.
Sure. I do think that, if you're a recent grad and you have access to a premium account, I would not say no. The main thing where premium accounts come into play is, what I found is that if you do a lot of advanced searches, and if I were to just put my cursor here, you could do search by companies, by groups, by content, all those other things. If you do a lot of searches, LinkedIn does have a limit each month. And so, for example, if I were to, again, this has happened in the past, if I have a business trip to San Francisco, then for that month, I'm doing a lot of research on ducks in San Francisco. I'm trying to find out where they work, if I'm connected to them. And oftentimes, if I'm doing that around the 23rd of the month, I might hit a limit that says, you can't do any more of these advanced searches. Please upgrade to the premium account. So that's one of the things that you may hit if you don't have the premium account. Now, the search I just showed you all, which was to use the school option and filter it down, that seems to be a lot more flexible. So I think there's always, ways to get information that you need. But premium account allows you to do more searches. Premium account also allows you to direct message people who are not only your first degree connection. So again, I think that's a benefit that may be helpful. For me, this is where I'm going to share a little bit of my philosophy. Sometimes an action requires more work, but I think by doing more work, you stand out. By doing more work, you're showing your energy, your creativity, your initiative, and I think it helps you further down the road. As compared to if you do things that are quick and easy now, it can be harder later. And so my example here is, yes, if you have LinkedIn Premium, you can message people. But I don't know about you, but I had a hard enough before COVID-19. I already had a hard enough time with my own inbox on Outlook. Now I have Teams. Now I'm trying to be on LinkedIn more. Now I also have text. So there's a point where, oh my gosh, it's pretty overwhelming, right? So, just because you can send me a message doesn't mean I'm going to see it. On the other hand, if you know Megan, but you don't know me, if you took time to reach out to Megan, reconnect with her, ask her questions about me so that you know more about me. And then when she feels, when you feel that she knows what you're interested in, you can ask her, oh, can I send you an email, Megan, that you then forward to James that explains what you can learn from him. When I get an email from someone I know, like Megan, I will read it, right? So again, just kind of keep in mind the easy things and the hard things, and it doesn't necessarily get you what you want at the end of the day. Sometimes the effort is what separates you from everyone else.
All right. Well, James, it looks like that's our last question.
Okay. So my parting thoughts is, as I said earlier on, I'm a big advocate for LinkedIn, but I am by no means an expert. And so if you have tricks to share, please let me know. I think speaking on behalf of Megan, Lauren Barkley, myself, and everyone who's part of our digital engagement team, who are producing events like last week's COVID-19 chat, which, by the way, I put on my LinkedIn profile because I hosted it. So I'm like, hey, it shows a little bit of my skills. But again, be sure to contact us because we want to help ducks. We want to help you connect with each other. And we know we're going through tough times, but this is our time to really focus on ourselves. For some people, you've known about LinkedIn, but you're taking the opportunity now to really dive in. And for others who have been, working on LinkedIn, this is really a chance to up your LinkedIn game. So again, it's been a pleasure sharing what I know with you. And once again, as I said, reach out via a LinkedIn Connect request. I'm happy to accept you, and a little note that says you were on the webinar to let me know your feedback. So with that, let me share my screen back so that Megan can wrap up. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much, James, for sharing your LinkedIn expertise with us. And thank you to all of our Duck alumni and students who sat in on this webinar today. I hope that you're taking away some new insights that you can apply now to increase your online presence and stay connected professionally during this unusual time. If you enjoyed this event, you can find future online events at uoalumni.com/events. I also wanted to mention If you would like to assist students right now that are struggling financially, please consider contributing to the Student Crisis Fund. Students can access these funds to offset lost income from lost part-time jobs and use them to pay for things like rent and other bills. All contributions will make an impact on a student's life. So if you're interested, please go to duckfunder.uoregon.edu/students in crisis to make a donation. And lastly, if you'd like to update your contact info so the UO can continue to stay in touch with you and help you connect with fellow Ducks, please shoot an email to engagement@uoregon.edu to update your information. And again, just thank you all for joining James and I in today's webinar. Best wishes to you and your families. Please stay well. Have a wonderful day and go Ducks.